I know you remember this. This was a while ago. This was, I don't know, 15 years ago, maybe. We were in a band together for a very short period of time called the High Life.
Yeah.
Are we going to get that band back together?
Yeah.
What's the over under on that?
The question is, did you get a new set of drums or repair them?
Welcome to the Sellouts. I am James Schramm, financial advisor at Schramm Financial Group, also certified exit planning advisor. Here we talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of selling your business and trying to get across the finish line. We'll go into details on what you should expect and what you need to do to prepare. I encourage you to like and subscribe. Obviously, that helps us with the algorithms and helps us get better guests. So I encourage you all to do that when you get a chance. And today we have a special guest. I'm good friends with this guest. His name is Mike Hansen. We grew up together, and he has been through a lot of different buys and sells. He's been on both sides, as well as worked for a private equity firm and been part of some Five Guys franchisees. So want to turn some time over to him and explain a little bit about his background.
Yeah, sure. So I'm an accountant by background. I'm a CPA, but I've never practiced as a public accountant. So I'm glad I never had to do that. But my background is in accounting. After a few years being in professional practice, ended up going to a private equity firm. It's kind of a small boutique private equity firm, where we were a little different because we actually like operated the businesses that we ran. And when we were there, I was there for about 10 years or so. We were a franchise. The main investment we had was we were a franchisee for Five Guys Burgers and Fries. So we owned the area development rights for everything in Utah, Idaho, Oklahoma, and then part of California. We also started and acquired some other businesses, some other restaurant franchises, did some general contracting, that sort of thing. And eventually ended up selling our Five Guys off in like three different tranches. And about 5 years ago or so, my partner and I branched off and kind of started doing our own thing where it's just me and him, um, acquiring businesses, trying to operate them, trying to grow them. So back in 2020, we bought a medical billing business. That was our first foray into like entrepreneurship, doing it on our own together. And we grew that, both through acquisition and organically, and then ended up selling that early this year. We also bought like an HVAC company in Hawaii, that my partner's out there running right now. And anyways, all the divestitures that we've done, all the exits we've done have been to like family offices, or strategic buyers or private equity, that sort of thing. So anyways, that's some background on me, and looking forward to be here and chat with you.
Well, we appreciate it. We appreciate you dedicating some time to be on this. So tell me a little bit about when you acquire these businesses, I mean, I know the ultimate goal is to sell them. Do you guys do anything different compared to normal business when you come in a buyer knowing that you're going to eventually try to sell it? Is it a different mentality?
Yeah, I think that it probably is. I think it's definitely a different mentality than like a founder, right? Like a founder, they grow and develop a business, and it's like over years and years of time, and when they grow it, it just becomes like their baby, right? And the businesses that we run are really important to us, especially the people and everything. But it is for us more like a commodity, right? And so when we come into a business, we're immediately looking at saying like, okay, when do we think this we can sell this? What do we think we can sell it for? I kind of liken it to like the first time I bought a house. I didn't know much about buying a house and made some mistakes in buying the house. And one of the things I didn't think about was like, okay, how well is this going to sell? Like, how quickly is it going to sell? What's the appreciation going to be on the house? And we ended up buying a house in like rural Missouri was our first home. It took a long time to sell, and there wasn't much appreciation on it. And so it was like, well, the next time we buy a house, we've got to like plan for that one to like how fast is it going to sell? How much is it going to sell for? That sort of thing. And so when we go into buying businesses, we kind of look at the same way, like, okay, who are the potential buyers of this business? How long do we think we can sell it? What do we think the value of the exit's going to be? All that sort of stuff. So we're looking at it with the end in mind, like right away. Even though we don't plan on selling it necessarily, like in the near term, we still look at it really closely, like, okay, what's this going to sell for?
Yeah. And so like private equity firms, they generally, if they have a fund, they've got to produce certain results in a certain amount of time, right? Generally,
Yeah.
5, 7 years, something like that. Are you doing that with I know you did that kind of with the private equity firm you started with, but now with the businesses now that you buy, are you saying, hey, we want to be out in 5, 7 years, or is it we're gonna see where it goes?
No, for us, it's definitely more. We're going to see where it goes. Like I said, my partner and I are it's just me and him basically. I mean,
Hmm.
we do have like in our HVAC company, we have one other investor, but we're really patient with it. We just kind of want to see where we can take it. Um, so we don't have any sort of timeline on when are we going to sell. Now with our medical billing business, we sort of did have in mind like, okay, at what point do we want to sell this? So it was kind of interesting with the medical billing business because we bought that and it was doing about $300,000 in EBITDA. Or when they're smaller deals, you look at something that's called seller discretionary earning, which is like you adjust out all of the owner's personal expenses, that sort of thing. And so you say, okay, and you adjust out their salary and say, okay, what are the earnings of the business? And it was about 300,000. And we had spoken with in general, some private equity firms and said, like, okay, at what point do you look at buying a business? And what's kind of the lowest level you'll buy a business? And most of them ended up saying like, once you get to about $3 million in EBITDA, that's when we're interested in looking at you. And this is generally the multiple that you end up paying. And we bought the medical billing business for about a 3 multiple. It was right around there. And so we were like, okay, well, look, if we can like grow this, um, whether we roll these up through acquisitions or whether it's through organic growth and we can get to like $3 million, then all of a sudden, it turns out that the PE firms are interested in it and they may buy them for like a 5 or 6 multiple. And so in our minds, when we learned that, we were like, okay, let's go grow the medical billing business to get to $3 million in EBITDA.
Hmm.
So that's kind of what our goal was with them. And then it turned out that all happened a lot faster than we thought. We didn't have to get to 3 million. So what happened was we started trying to buy other medical billing businesses, and they were our size or smaller even. And as we were trying to buy them, we were like losing all the deals, and we found out it was like super competitive. And it got to the point where we'd see a listing, it would pop up saying it's for sale. We would sign an NDA real quick. We'd get the SIM or the memo, the confidential information memorandum. We'd get that. We'd look at it. If it fit within our multiple, we'd send a letter of intent for the full asking price. And we were still losing out just like immediately.
Really?
Um, So what we started learning was like, hey, these things are selling at a higher multiple than what we bought this at. So it turned out that private equity firms were more interested in like once you got it to about 1 million in EBITDA, they were buying them for like a 5, 6, 7 multiple. And so we got like super lucky on that because it shortened our timeline and we were able to sell it a lot faster because of that.
Yeah. And when you were looking at these companies to buy, like you said, once you get to a certain size, that's when private equity tends to like it. Or not even just that, the bigger you get, the higher multiple generally these companies are willing to pay for. And so were you targeting just like small ones about your size, or were you trying to get as much growth as possible and extend yourself maybe?
Well, we were doing both at the same time. We were saying, okay, how do we grow this organically? Um, and we about doubled in size organically, more than that, actually, more than doubled
Oh,
in
really?
size in about 3 years, 2.5, 3 years. So we built a lot of good relationships with people in the community we build for like mental health, substance use facilities typically. And we built a
Hmm.
really good reputation there, grew that there. And then sort of at the tail end of us owning the business, we acquired another smaller billing company and that was in the same field, same industry, and that put us kind of over the multiple, over the the $1 million in EBITDA,
Yeah.
where all of a sudden PE firms were like, we're ready to go. Yeah.
Did you have a couple PE firms that you were already talking to, or did you go out to market and just try to, sell yourself to as many as possible and try to get a bidding war? How did that happen?
Yeah, so we definitely very, very early on, our strategy was to say we want to be bought by a strategic buyer or we want to be bought by a private equity firm or something like that. So really early on, we started looking at the competitors and saying, okay, which competitors are owned by private equity, and which ones are which private equity firms are the buyers of them. So we started contacting competitors and PE firms really, really early on. I mean, within the first 6 to 12 months of us owning the business, and having conversations with them like, hey, we're growing. You guys ever interested in buying? And the good thing about all of that is the answer to those questions is almost always yes, right? Like they are looking for deal flow and they're
Yeah.
looking for deals, and we could just be really upfront and honest with them and be like, well, what are you looking for? Like this is where we're at. What are you looking for? And they'll tell you. They'll tell you like,
Hmm.
we're looking at for this size of revenue, we're looking for this size of EBITDA, we're looking for this sort of specialty, right? And as my partner and I did that, we started realizing like, well, we can build our model around those exact same things that they're looking for, and then just try to go hit those numbers, right? Hit the margins, hit the profitability, whatever it is, right? Or
Yeah.
a big thing was like that they were looking for was customer concentration, right? Like, is all of your revenue coming from one customer or two customers, or do you have them split between a bunch of them? And that was actually a bit of a challenge for us. Is we had one customer in particular that just grew massively as we owned the company, and ended up being with the one business, the first business we owned, ended up coming into like 30% of the revenue of the total revenue of our business. And we were like,
Yeah.
well,
So what number? So sorry to cut you off on there, but what number do you feel like is starting to get too high? My understanding is around 25% is when, if you're 25% of your revenue is coming in from one client, that starts to get a little bit, I want to say dangerous, but private equity firms start to knock off your valuation because of that. Do you find that to be a little bit less in your case?
I feel like it might be a little bit less. Like I might say that most of them are looking like they don't want more like than like 20%, but 25%'s pretty high for them. And ideally they're looking
Yeah.
for like 10 or 15%.
Yeah.
Um,
So how are those conversations when you were reaching out to these other companies, your competitors, and saying, "Hey, do you want to buy me?" Like how does is that kind of a weird conversation?
no, 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 I don't think so. Because like I said, ultimately they are looking for this, right? Like
Yeah.
that's what they do. That's what they're out there looking for. I mean, even the PE firm that we sold the billing company to, in January, reached out today and was like, "Hey, send any others your way that you know of," right? So like
Hmm.
they're constantly looking for this sort of thing, and so they're going to be really open, um, and even maybe even want to have like, um, I know with our HVAC company, we actually have like a quarterly meeting with one firm that just wants to track our status, you know?
Oh,
So
really?
so they are interested in knowing these things, and they're actually really helpful. Like the HVAC with the HVAC company, there's a PE firm that like is hooking us up with certain vendors that are in their
Hmm.
vendor list, right? So like, um, it's not an awkward conversation. They're usually very, very open and willing to say, like, let's help you get to where we want you to be so we can acquire you.
Yeah. Have you ever worked with an investment bank at all? I know you worked on the PE side yourself, so you're pretty familiar with the process and what to do to get companies ready. But kind of finding someone in that, for example, in the HVAC field that knows all the players and knows exactly what to do to kind of get the best price.
We've not done that. We've not done that on our own. I mean, I've worked with some sell side investment bankers, but not with them on the buy side. We've
Hmm.
definitely reached out to like investment bankers to gauge what's the multiple, right? Like what's the multiple that people are paying in this industry, but we haven't used them to sell our own businesses. Um, and we've definitely not used a broker to sell any of them either because we, if you go through brokers, most of them are not that great.
Yeah,
you know
I agree. I feel like on the broker side, they're going to take a commission, they take a big chunk, and they're not really adding, well, some of them are good, but a lot of them don't add a lot of value to, especially if you have the expertise that you have. So
yeah.
for other business owners that have never sold their business and they have no idea what they're doing, getting some kind of broker involved is generally a good idea. But from your perspective, I can imagine it's like we can do without. So
No, like if you don't have the ability or the connections to go find buyers, then brokers are a great way to go. Um,
yeah,
and if you don't have the ability to or know people that can help you put together your financial statements really well, put together like a pitch deck and a memo really well, then brokers can be really, really good. But you've got to find the right broker because most of them are only getting paid like once they get your listing, they get paid, right? They get paid once they sell your listing. And
yeah,
so there's not a huge incentive for them to sell and market your business really well. Um, that being said, I have met a couple of really good brokers, and one of them in particular we found while we were trying to buy one of these medical billing businesses, and he was really good at pitting. Like he went out and found a bunch of buyers, bunch of potential buyers, strategic buyers, and pitted us all up against each other. And that's kind of what you want to end up happening when you're selling a business,
yeah.
right? So there are a couple of them out there that are really good, but most of them are, you know, just want your listing and then they don't ever really sell it. So
Yeah. So talk a little bit about, you had mentioned kind of the benchmarks of knowing where to be. Can you explain a little bit more about why it's important to know kind of industry benchmarks and what you should be aiming for?
yeah, so I think it's important to understand what your buyers want. Um, and sometimes you're going to have very different preferences on buying, on what they want. And I'll give you an example of this. So we own this HVAC company. This HVAC company is a mainly commercial services company. So they're doing like um, a lot of commercial building, big units, rooftop units, big cooling towers, all sorts of stuff like that. Um, we're not doing a lot of residential. We're not doing a lot of service on residential or new installs. We're doing a lot of commercial stuff. There are most private equity buyers right now in the HVAC industry are looking for residential service based revenue. They like that repeat revenue. Um, we had the opportunity to acquire an HVAC company here in Utah that they were doing basically all brand new construction, multifamily housing. And we got pretty far down the path with them in potentially buying this. We started talking to private equity firms about buying this one in particular. Most of them would not even touch it. They were like, this is not the
Really?
revenue we want. That's more like a construction business. Like it's almost negative value to us.
Wow.
Others would say, well, we maybe pay you like a one multiple on it, but like we really don't want that. So that and that's been confirmed as we've talked to more and more private equity firms over time. So like it saves you a lot when you're trying to buy. It also helps you a lot as you're trying to grow your business. Like we know now, um, residential service is a big one that HVAC PE firms want because so much of our revenue is coming from commercial service. Like now we've narrowed down, okay, these are the PE firms that buy this specific type of business, and we need to hit like do all of our advertising, all of our sales and business development needs to be directed towards commercial service as opposed to like trying to go find the residential service. So
Yeah.
it's really valuable for to know that before you're trying to build your business and it turns out, well, I built it in a completely different direction, or I went and bought a business that was in a completely different direction than what the strategic buyers were looking for.
Yeah. Yeah. And to your point with the residential or just recurring revenue, that's something that a lot of these that's really attractive to outside buyers when they see money kind of constantly coming in. And so in the commercial spaces, there not as much recurring revenue on that. I know on the new construction, obviously that's a one-time thing and then you move on. But with commercial, is there it does it just not generate as much annual or monthly recurring revenue?
And it can generate as much recurring revenue. In our case, we feel like it probably generates more. I think it's a little
Okay.
harder to get that revenue though, right? Like with
Oh, okay.
residential, you can advertise like on Google AdWords or social media or whatever, and most people that are getting those are going to be, somebody looking on their phone, flipping through Instagram, Facebook, something like that, right? And say, oh,
Hmm.
I need service on my HVAC. Let me go sign up. As opposed to where it's commercial, like we went and hired a business development person who is out there trying to drum up business essentially by knocking doors, right? So it's harder to get. It's less of a built-in system and process, and it's a lot more cold calling. So I think that's why PE firms are more attracted to like the recurring residential service side.
Yeah. So some of these businesses you have been like in the trenches working, and some of them you're kind of more on the outside. Talk a little bit about making sure that you aren't the business, because that is a big part of valuations, right? Of having the owner kind of be able to not be in the day to day, I guess, or an integral part on the day to day. Can you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's a huge part. There's a lot of businesses that we look at that I think a lot of business owners are like, this is my baby and I need something to do, and I've got to just I've got to will all of this to happen and work out, right? And uh, while it's a really good short-term strategy and it's a good way to create cash flow for yourself because you're like, hey, I'm not paying somebody else to do my job, right? And so I can keep that money. It makes it a lot harder to sell the business to someone, especially like us, that it's like, well, we want to go, or a private equity firm where we want to grow and roll up other businesses. We want people in place that know how to run the business. Um, so that and that was actually like a really attractive thing for the billing companies that we bought. The billing company, there was a person running it. She was doing a pretty good job. We came in and basically just said like, okay, what do you guys need? Like, and they outlined these are the things that we need. This is the software, this is the system, this is the processes, these are the people. And we said, okay, let's go get those things and people, right? And so we were able to work kind of on the business and not in the business as much. I mean, we still did a lot of business development. We still did a lot of customer relations. We were still managing the managers, right?
Yeah.
But we built out the structure of the organization and processes and systems so that if another company came and inserted a manager over that business, they could run everything essentially the same way.
Yeah.
We're You go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, yeah, I see. And I think the hard thing is a lot of people, especially if they're the founder, right? They started the business. That's all they know. Because at first you can't afford to hire all these different people. And like you said, it saves money to be able to just kind of do it on your own. But as they get bigger and bigger and bigger, if they really want that growth potential, like you said, they need to be working on the business and not in the business. But on top of that, it just makes it a lot easier, like you said, for somebody to be able to buy it because if you're gone and you are the business, then they're having to work in it. And a lot of times, like you said, they're either trying to roll it up or they're buying the business and not wanting to be in the day-to-day grind. So it really limits who can buy you and for what multiple. But
For sure. And we see this a lot. I mean, we're looking at trying to acquire other HVAC companies right now. And I mean, there's three businesses in the last 2 weeks that we've looked at. And all three of them, the owners are like part of the business of actually running it. They're doing the service work, doing the technical work, that sort of thing. And it really like has eliminated those options for us almost entirely, you know. So it's really important that if you're wanting to exit at some point, you have to have the people and the processes in place where you're not really part of the business. Like we call it building yourself out of the job, right? Like you got to
yeah,
build yourself out of the business. Otherwise, you're not as attractive, and you can't command a higher multiple. You're kind of stuck with like a 1, 2, maybe 3 multiple on it.
yeah. Do you guys focus on certain KPIs, key performance indicators, when you buy these businesses? Do you look at those things, or are you just looking at pure EBITDA and going from there?
It's for us. It's mainly what's the multiple on it. When we're buying them, we're trying to stick to around a 3 multiple. I know that kind of precludes a lot of businesses that we could buy that are like a 4 or 5. But my partner and I are mainly like SBA loan guys. And when we do right around a 3 multiple, it allows us to buy these businesses and still flow cash well enough that we're still getting some money out of it while we're able to and use the money to reinvest to grow. Once they start getting to like a 4 or 5, it's like, well, the money that you're getting from those, you kind of start breaking even cash flow wise, and it just doesn't really make a lot of sense for us to be able to
Yeah.
do. Yeah.
Do you want to talk a little bit about the advantages of using the SBA loans? I know you're a big fan, and you kind of I want to say have creative ways, but using SBA loans that you other people haven't been using them the same way.
Yeah. So, I was actually, when I was at the PE firm, we did a lot of capital raising amongst like a very small selective group of people. But we also did conventional loans and debt typically when we were trying to acquire or grow. And I was not really familiar with the SBA at all until my partner had approached me about buying the medical billing business and found out, he starts walking me through all of this. And I'm like, man, SBA debt is very, very accessible for people. And there's a lot of really good advantages with it. One is, you don't need a lot of collateral. If you're buying a business with an SBA loan and you're under collateralized, they'll lien your house. So that's that's what it is, right? But
Yeah.
but you can still get the loan without a lot of collateral in the business.
Yeah.
Another thing is like they only really require like 10-15% of down payment on a business. But what they allow you to do is if a seller holds a note, that counts towards your percentage of down payment. So it's like, okay, well, if you can get the seller to hold a 5-10% note, then all of a sudden you only have to put 5-10% down. And so it does not take a lot of capital to be able to buy, $1 million business, right?
Yeah. Do you see a lot of owners being willing to take on a note for an extended period of time, or an earnout, something like that?
Yeah, most of them will. Most of them will. Earnouts are really so. I'll start with the down payment or the seller note. I think most brokers tell the sellers, hey, there might be a note that you have to hold, right? And so I think they're pretty well prepared that, hey, there's a note that you're going to have to hold. We like it as a buyer because then there's skin in the game for them to help us, right? Um, because if they don't help us and the business doesn't work out, then they just don't end up getting paid the rest of their loan.
Yeah.
Um, when it comes to what were we talking about? What was the other point that we wanted to?
Oh, I talked about shoot, why can't I think of it? I had talked about doing earnout.
Oh, the earnout. So SBA does not allow for an earnout.
Okay.
So they don't allow for an earnout. It's just something that the SBA won't do. But what we found is there are some creative ways of being able to do that. One is create a seller's note that is forgivable or forgivable in steps, right? So it's sort of like a reverse earnout. So we had on one of the deals we did like, here's two seller's notes. A portion of this, we're going to pay you over time, and a portion of this will pay you over time. But if we don't hit a certain level of revenue or earnings, then whatever we have not paid you gets forgiven the rest of the way. And the SBA is
Yeah.
totally okay with that. And a lot of SBA bankers don't even know that you can do that.
Oh, really?
Yeah. A lot of them don't know you can do that. A lot of them also don't know that you can, as part of your deal with when you're doing an SBA loan, you can buy the seller's cash with the SBA loan. So it's a way that you can say, well, I don't have the working capital to be able to fund this, for 60, 90, 120 days or whatever. So what is the working capital? And we'll just we'll increase the purchase price by that amount and then say, and seller, you're going to sell us your cash for that amount. And then all of a sudden you've got your working capital.
So you're just rolling their cash into the loan?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good. So talk a little bit about, I know you come from an accounting background. Talk a little bit about financials and the importance of having strong financials.
Yeah. So, especially when we were with a private equity firm, we'd probably look at 20 deals, 20 potential deals a year. And it's probably 90% of them don't have financial data that's strong enough to like they just don't tie out to the financials that you're provided. So it's 9 out of 10 almost immediately, are not going to be making the money that they tell you that they're making.
Is it they just aren't recording their P&L accurately, or they're hiding stuff, or what kind of things come into play there?
It's a little bit of both. I'd say most of them are initially saying like, okay, here's our P&L, here's what we're making, and we adjusted out all of these expenses that you're really not going to need to run the business. And so when they first present you their P&L, they've adjusted those out, and it turns out, no, you can't adjust out all of your advertising expense and say that we don't
Yeah.
need to advertise, right? I mean, but it's actually a very common thing that sellers do. And so
Specifically advertising, or?
specifically advertising, I've seen that many, many times. Oh, well, here's advertising. You don't really need advertising. We really don't get any sales from that. Or here's all these meals that I took prospective clients out, but that was all my choice, and you don't really need to do that. You need to do that, right?
Yeah.
So that's I'd say would be the number one thing that immediately to look for. Um, Another thing is their accounting records are just not great. And I'll give you an example of this. We actually had a deal that we were looking to buy that about a month ago it fell through, which was super painful. It didn't fall through because
Yeah.
of these financial things, but I'll kind of tell you what happened with the financial stuff. But they got a new accountant. They had a bookkeeper for a while. For whatever reason, weren't happy with the bookkeeper. They got a new accountant who was supposed to come in and clean up everything. And one thing that they did not do, that most business owners don't even look at, is they did not reconcile their balance sheet accounts. So they'd reconcile their cash accounts, right? But they're not looking at every single balance sheet account. And most business owners don't. Most business owners are like, give me the P&L, right? That's all that
Yeah.
matters. I want to know what cash. I want to know the P&L. We're done. Um, and that was the case, I think, with this business. What happened was they took when they got the new accountant, rather than booking all of the credit card charges from the credit card statement into the individual P&L expense accounts, rather than doing that and reconciling the credit card statements, they took, I think, out of probably laziness, they just took all the payments on the credit card and booked it to the sales tax or the credit card liability account, which that business was doing. When we first started looking at it, they were saying they were doing about $1.2 million a year in earnings. Once we looked at that, they had booked about $300,000 of that into this balance sheet account. So it was like, no, you're making $900,000. We found that out.
Yeah.
Then the other thing we found out as we were looking at their records was that they were recording their sales tax to sales, to revenue. That was another $300,000 or so. And we had to point this out to them. So all of a sudden, they genuinely, I think, did not know that they did this. Right?
Oh, really? Did they owe a bunch of back taxes on the sales
They owe a
tax?
ton of they owe a ton of sales. Yeah, yeah. But they weren't looking at their balance sheet. So all of a sudden it was like, well, you started out saying you're making 1.2 million. Now we're finding out you're making like 600,000. Like this is a much
Yeah.
different deal than what we were originally
Very,
looking at.
very different.
And the price, we were like, well, we'll still do it, but we got to bring the price like way down, right? And
Yeah.
so they're already making plans with the money, and it's like, no, that money isn't coming now. And so it's really, really important that like you have good financial records, because someone like us will come along, find out that it's wrong, or you'll get malicious people that are like, well, we're going to figure out something in this. We're not going to tell the seller about it, and we're going to come at the last minute where they've got all their hopes up, they're ready, waiting for the money, and then they're going to say, we want to reprice this because we found this thing in diligence.
Yeah. Well, and you need to have the expenses broken down. Number one, different expenses are written off the business different ways, right?
Mhm.
So, just for cleaning your accounting records if you ever get audited, but also knowing for the buyer what they can strip out, what they can't, what they can plan on, what they may think that they need to increase. I was talking to somebody actually just yesterday. I was on this small business council, and he said he was going to buy a business, and they didn't break out any of their expenses. They just said our gross profit was this. This was our total expenses, so this is our profit.
Mm.
Is our net profit, and like they had no detail on anything in between on what they were expensing. And so the guy that was looking at buying the business is like, I can't buy this without knowing where all this money is going, how profitable this business really is or not, because you don't have any real record of any of this. So definitely need to have, clean records and know where your money's going. Every dollar has to have, in my opinion, has to be earning money for you. There's a return on investment for every dollar. It's got to be working for you. So it's really important to know where every dollar is going.
For sure. And then if you're not breaking it out, and you, even if you're having these conversations with strategic buyers and they've given you the metrics that you need to hit, a lot of times the metrics they're looking for are certain gross margin numbers, right? And if you're not hitting these gross margin numbers or industry standards, then they're going to look at you and go, well, we don't want to buy you, or we're going to give you a smaller multiple, right? And if you're not breaking out these expenses, you can't really hit the metrics that they're looking for.
Yeah. No, I agree. I agree. Anything else that any experiences or learning lessons that you've had as you've bought and sold different companies?
Oh man, I think the biggest one on the buying side of things, the biggest one that I've learned is um, you do need to make sure you've got really good people and personnel that are in place in the businesses that you're buying. And you need to identify the key people and really do everything you can to keep them in place, whether it's through contracts, staying bonuses, treating them really well. The businesses where we've been able to maintain the key employees have done really well, and the businesses where we couldn't maintain the key employees really disintegrated pretty quickly. so
Yeah.
so that's one thing that I've really learned. Um,
So do you think that you should have those conversations with the employees before you sell, or because that can also kind of ruin company culture if they don't know they're going to have a job or what's going to happen with the business. New ownership comes in, they get nervous. Any thoughts on communication with the employees?
yeah, you're talking about like existing employees that you have in a business
Yeah,
you're selling.
yeah,
Yeah. So one thing I don't tell, I try not to tell or inform anybody until like I'm almost certain that this business is going to sell. And I've done that because personally, like when I was with the Five Guys group, I saw every time they were looking to sell the business or sell parts of
hmm
it. And I was the one doing all the diligence. And so I ended up probably going through diligence, 15 different rounds of diligence during that time. It took a pretty big toll on me personally, you know, especially like one time, like they were going to make me COO, they were going to give me this big old raise, and then the deal fell through. That's pretty heartbreaking, um, for an employee to be like, I had this opportunity, it's just gone, right?
yeah.
So,
Yeah, sorry, I got a client in Vegas, and they used to be here in California, and they moved to Vegas, but they've almost sold. I think they're selling right now. I think it's going to be a closed deal this week. I hope. But anyways, the president of the company, she wasn't the owner. She had been told multiple times she's going to sell. She's going to get this big earn out at the very end. She's get this big lump sum, and it never happens. And now they're finally selling, and she's going to get a lump sum, but it's way smaller.
mm,
And she's just like gutted inside, and she's kind of mad at the owner. She doesn't plan on staying around after the sale because of all this. She's just like done with the company, and it's been hard on her for sure.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think you've really got. From the things I've went through personally, I'm trying to be really sensitive to them, right? Which is like I'm not going to tell anybody this is going on until I know that it's happening, as well as I can possibly know, right?
Yeah,
But then when you have those conversations, it's important to be gentle and guide them, and then try to say like, here's how we're going to help you in this next part of your life with this new owner. And then as we're buying, we now have conversations with the employees before we will buy.
yeah,
That's been a requirement now because we had an experience where we weren't allowed to do that, and we lost those employees pretty fast, and it was pretty bad. It was a pretty bad scenario. So we
yeah,
do require, as part of the buying process, that we be able to talk to the employees and at least gauge like, are they are they going to stick around? Do we think they're going to stick around? Because with one of these employees that we didn't have a conversation with before we bought, after I had my first conversation with her after we bought, I was like, she's gone. Like, she's gone.
really.
I know she's going to leave. Yeah, yeah, and that's what happened. It was within like 2-3 months she was gone. Yeah.
Yeah, that's tough. Any thoughts? One of my last guests, John Richards, we talked a little bit about not letting off the gas before you sell because you don't know if it's going to happen. Any experiences or thoughts about deals you think they're going to go through and then don't end up going through?
Yeah, I mean, it happens all the time. All the time. Like, uh, I'd say that a good 50% of deals will kind of make it to the end, and then at the very last minute will fall through. We've had two deals like that happen in the past 2 years. One time the seller was like, I decided I've had to change of heart, I just don't want to sell it. And then this most recent one about a month ago, we were totally done with the deal, and the landlord blew up the deal. So it's things out of our control. And so you've got to constantly still be making sure the business is being run the same way. You're hiring all the people just like you normally would. You're
Yeah.
running processes the same way, just like you normally would. You're selling the same way you normally would. Like, you just cannot celebrate the deal until the money gets into the bank account, because there's
hmm
there's too many things that will blow up. And then another thing that I've learned is never put off a vacation because you think you're going to have a deal. that's going to close.
I'm assuming there's a story behind that.
Yeah, well, yeah, like when I was at the PE firm, like I said, I went through like 15 rounds of diligence on the five guys that we were selling. And there was one time when I had a vacation dates planned. I don't think we might have even booked flights. I don't remember what it was.
Where were we
And
going? Do you remember?
um I don't remember. My parents lived in Aruba for like 7 years, so I think it was probably going there. I don't remember
I,
exactly
I
what it was.
I got invited out to Aruba with
Yeah,
Brian, your brother, and I didn't
yeah.
go, and I regret it. To this day I still regret never going out to Aruba while your parents lived out there.
This is from snorkel there. I mean, it's just crazy.
Okay, that's awesome. That's huge.
It's huge. But anyways, so we had this vacation planned, and one day one I had two bosses at this PE firm, and one of them walked in and was like, "Hey, we've got an offer for the five guys, and this is the time frame where they're going to want to close." And I was like, I told him, I was like, I have a vacation like planned during that time. And he's like, well, you're going to have to cancel your vacation for it, you know, cancel the
Mhm.
vacation. This thing didn't even like go anywhere. Like it didn't go anywhere. And so
Really?
yeah, so like I canceled this vacation for someone else to potentially close on a transaction, and it didn't ever happen. And I made it a rule of mine, like don't cancel your vacations. Like go on your vacation, make it happen. And funny enough, when we sold the medical billing businesses, I was on vacation when we closed.
There you go.
Yeah.
You can still make money while on vacation. I like to hear that.
We'll make money, and my family didn't even notice what was going on.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's great. That's a good vacation. I feel good after a deal's done while you're snorkeling in Hawaii or something like that.
No, we
That's
were
great.
in Hawaii. Yeah, so
Oh,
I
okay. There we go.
remember sitting on the beach, and I knew the money was coming in, sitting on the beach, and boom, it hit the bank account. And I look at my wife, I'm like, look at this. It was a good feeling. It was a good feeling. Yeah.
I remember I was at SeaWorld, not a grand vacation, but we were actually in San Diego staying with my wife's family down in Mission Bay right on the beach, and we were at SeaWorld day one day, and I had a potential client, a prospect, call me and say he was officially going to sign with us, and I was just like, I was on cloud nine. I was like, this is the best vacation ever. I'm in Hawaii, or I'm in San Diego. It's great weather. We're spending time with the family. Kids are loving SeaWorld, and I just landed a decent sized client. So it was a great vacation. So
Yeah, well, that's why you get to take the vacations, because you worked real hard to earn those clients in the first place, right?
yeah,
So like it all
exactly.
pays off. But yeah, never put that
Yeah,
off. Never put that off for
yeah.
any.
Anything you've missed? Anything? Any other words of wisdom that you would give to anybody looking to sell their business?
Oh, look, I just say plan ahead as far as you can. Get all your ducks in order. Understand, talk to strategic buyers. Understand what they are looking for, and then again, don't don't count on it being done until the money's in the bank.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think those are all great words. Well, we'll wrap up here, but two things, two very important things. Number one, we're both big Dodger fans, and by the time this gets released, the World Series will probably be done. But game one is today.
Uh-huh.
What are your thoughts? How is it going to go down? And how many games are the Dodgers going to win? Knock
Oh
on wood.
man. I think this is going to be a tough series. I think tonight it's at home, so I think they're going to win 7-4 is what I think. And I think we're going to
Seven.
seven.
Okay. So today's game is going to be 7-4. Okay.
Today's game is going to be 7-4, and I think we're going to go 7 games.
You think it'll go seven against the Yankees? Oh,
I
I
think
like
it's
that.
gonna go 7. I think it's going to go 7. I think it's going to be tough. I think the Dodgers. I mean, their pitching's their starting pitchers are in a world of hurt, right? So,
Oh my gosh. I think we have one starter, Yamamoto. He started the season,
uh,
and he's the only one. The rest have all gone on the IL. I think I read something like eight starters. Like most teams only have, you have 5 starters with a couple other kind of backup starters. We've had 8 starters go on the injured list this year. It's nuts.
It's just crazy. It's just crazy. I mean, I honestly can't believe they made it to the World Series with this
I
pitching,
can't either.
but they
I am.
made it happen, and you got Shohei. So,
He's been amazing.
yeah,
Freddie grinding out with the bad ankle, and he's been good. He's supposedly going to be back this series, and Flaherty has stepped up big time. Yamamoto's come back. Buehler's starting to pitch well again. He's back from injury. So, yeah, I had little. I'm not a fair weather fan. I love the Dodgers through and through, but I had very little faith that they were going to make it to the World Series this year. But they found a way. So, one other thing.
yeah.
So, I know you remember this. This was a while ago. This was, I don't know, 15 years ago, maybe. We were in a band together for a very short period of time called The High Life.
Yeah.
Are we going to get that band back together?
Yeah.
What's the over under on that?
The question is, did you get a new set of drums or repair them from?
That is true. So, story behind that, I was driving to a show and I didn't strap down my drum set in the back of they were on a rack. It's kind of, yeah, my drums were on a rack. Part of my drums flew off the back of out of my truck on the 15 freeway in Utah. Cars ran over a bunch of my drums. I had to put together a makeshift set an hour before we had a performance. And, so I think that was like our last performance as a group, actually. So
that was our last performance. Yeah, it was kind of funny. I think we were all, because that was a battle of the bands, right?
Yeah.
And
yeah,
we like made it through to the final rounds of the battle of the bands. And I think by that time we were all like, oh, I got so many things to do,
Exactly.
I do think about, that band. I think about like the other bands that I've been in because they were punk bands, right?
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I don't remember which band has, I don't remember if it was Lagwagon or Good Riddance or someone has, at the beginning of one of their songs, there's like a clip of some movie where the girl's like, would you stop worrying about their a guy's like, they're a bunch of punks. And she's like, would you stop worrying about their growing pains? They'll probably grow up to be doctors and lawyers someday. It's like, well, here we are,
There you are. Your brother's literally a doctor and he was in the band.
He was in our band, right? Like, yeah.
Good times. Well, Mike, I appreciate you being on. Anything about your companies that you own that you want to share, or anybody can get in contact with you if they have any questions?
Well, if you need any HVAC services on Maui by chance, you can hit us up. We're at All Temp at Maui.
There you go.
And yeah, or you can hit me up on LinkedIn. I connect with basically everybody who wants to connect with me. So
sounds good. Well, Mike, once again, appreciate your time, and we'll talk to you later.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, James.
Investment advisory services offered through Raymond James Financial Services Advisors, Inc., SRAM Financial Group, is not a registered broker-dealer and is independent of Raymond James Financial Services. Any opinions of those are of the speaker and not necessarily those of Raymond James. This material is being provided for informational purposes only and is not a complete description, nor is it a recommendation. There is no guarantee that these statements, opinions, or forecasts provided will prove to be correct. Investing involves risk, and you may incur a profit or a loss regardless of strategy selected. Past performance is no guarantee of future results. Prior to making an investment decision, please consult with your financial advisor about your individual situation. Raymond James is not affiliated with any guests on this podcast.